Hey friends, for some of you, this season is the most wonderful time of the year, but we also know in doing what we do to meet people in their pain and provide a pathway through, that for many, the holidays can be an extra difficult time as those you love process grief, trauma, loss, and just difficult transition. It seems to all kind of surface during the holiday season and remind people that at least of their feelings of being alone. Now, this Christmas, we want to help you find the perfect gift for the person in your life who is needing some hope and encouragement as they walk through pain. Or perhaps you yourself are going through a valley right now and you need something to guide you through it. So for 12 days in a row, we're offering a different deal each day on our physical products, such as our new Nothing is Wasted sweatshirts or the Restore box or books, as well as many of our digital products, including the Pain to Purpose course, some of our mini courses and master classes. And so every day, starting December 1st through December 12th, you'll be able to shop a new deal that will only last 24 hours. So if you're wanting to buy the perfect gift for someone in your life who is hurting, or if you yourself need a gift this Christmas that will help you on your journey towards healing, you're going to want to make sure that you get tuned into these deals each day. You can do it in 3 different ways. Let me give you 3 different ways you can do it. 1, you can subscribe to our email list by going to nothingiswasted.com and scroll to the bottom of the page and subscribe to the email list. Or right where you're at, you can text the number 12 to 66866. Okay, just text 12, just the number, to the number 66866, and it will prompt you to send us back your email address so we can make sure that we're sending you the email of the day each day during this 12 days of Christmas. And finally, if you want to just do it manually, you can just check nothingiswasted.com/shop each day, starting December 1st, going all the way through December 12th for the 12 days of Christmas deal. Again, that's nothingiswasted.com/shop, S-H-O-P. And we know the holidays can be extra difficult for many. That is why this year we want to help you give a gift that will be both intentional and meaningful for someone in your life that's walking through pain and is desperate to find hope and purpose in it. So thanks for journeying with us here at Nothing is Wasted Ministries. It's been a phenomenal year, and we're so excited for what God's going to do this year coming up. And so from all of us here at Nothing is Wasted Ministries, Merry Christmas, and we are thrilled to be a part of the journey of hope and healing that God has in store for you. Remember, in Christ, nothing is wasted. Merry Christmas, guys. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Nothing is Wasted podcast. My name is Davey. I'm one of your hosts, and we have a treat for you this week. I'm telling you, I have been waiting for a long time to have this guest on the Nothing is Wasted podcast. I was actually wanting to reserve this conversation for the book launch series, and unfortunately, he was out of the country when we were recording all of the book launch series episodes, and so we weren't able to do that. But we now have the infamous, the prolific Bob Goff on the Nothing is Wasted podcast. And this has been a long time coming because Bob is one of the first people that reached out to me after I lost my wife, Amanda. And he has been such an instrumental part and guide, if you will, for my healing journey. You know, I remember my assistant was combing through all of our emails at Resonate Church, the church I pastored at the time that we lost Amanda. And it was about, I don't know, a couple of weeks after Amanda passed away that we kind of realized as a team, Amanda used to check our catch-all email. It was called hello@resonateindy.com is what it was. And so people who would write in and we realized this because I had actually mentioned something on one of the major network shows that I was on with Good Morning America or CBS News or something like that. But I mentioned, hey, if Amanda's life and story have impacted you, we want to hear about that. Would you send us an email to hello@resonateindy.com? And a couple of weeks later, my assistant at the time, Megan, whom if you read Nothing is Wasted, the book, you'd see Megan throughout the story. But she was combing through those emails and she came across an email that said, essentially, I think it was like Bob or Bob Goff and Bob at bobgoff.com or something like that. I don't remember. And she goes, this can't be the Bob Goff. This has to be like a spam or something. But it basically said, Davey, I'm going to be in Chicago. Would you come and join me for dinner? And she was like, this can't be right. Like, there's no way. Sure enough, it was Bob Goff. And I think it surprised us so much. And we actually talk about this in this conversation. It surprised us so much because we all knew of Bob Goff. I mean, Love Does was taking off at this time. Just New York Times bestseller. But we were so surprised at how accessible he made himself. And it really ministered to me because no matter like the stratosphere that Bob was basically attaining with his work with Love Does and everything that he was doing, he was still very present and conscientious of people were just hurting and maybe needed someone to walk beside them and encourage them. And who was I that he would reach out and say, hey, I'd love to have dinner with you. Would you come and spend some time with me in Chicago? And it catalyzed a series of events in my life, this time in Chicago, that I look back on and I go, man, if it wasn't for Bob, I don't know where I would be. Perhaps the Lord would send somebody else to bring me along the journey, but Bob really set a string of events in my life that was so profound to my healing journey that, I just feel personally that I owe him so much. And so I'm so excited to finally be able to have a conversation with Bob Goff on the podcast. And I'm excited for you guys to get a window into who he is if you don't know him. Of course, you've hopefully have read his book, Love Does. He's just come out with his latest book, Catching Whimsy, 365 Days of Possibility. And so it's a daily devotional for a whole year. And this is just an awesome conversation. Before we dive into the conversation, I want to remind you that we have upcoming a Zoom call that I do once a month called 5 Steps to Taking Back Your Story, no matter what you've gone through. If you're looking to take a next step or a first step in your healing journey, this is the place to go. So you can register at nothingiswasted.com/start here, or go to the top of the main page, nothingiswasted.com, and just click on that link, start here, and get registered for the next 5 steps to taking back your story, no matter what you've gone through. Zoom call. Would love to have you on there. Would love to interact with you, spend some time with you, engage with you. It's always a sacred time. Always have some good Q&A afterwards. And so come join us. I'm excited about spending time with new members of the Nothing is Wasted community and people who have been around for a while but haven't stepped into this space. So 5 steps to taking back your story, no matter what you've gone through. nothingiswasted.com/start here. Without further ado, guys, oh man, you're in for a treat. Let's go ahead and dive into my conversation with Bob Goff. Well, Bob Goff, it's so great to have you on the Nothing is Wasted podcast. This is a long time coming, my man.
Yeah, thanks a million for including me. It's just great to see you.
It's when we
a fun adventure full of twists and turns in our friendship, and I'm just so glad that we can turn to each other just at important times like this.
Yeah. Well, when we started the Nothing is Wasted podcast, the whole impetus behind it was I'm meeting a whole lot of people on my healing journey who have really encouraged me, that I'm borrowing their faith when I didn't have it for myself. And I put your name at the top of the list. And I was like, man, I just don't know if if it's like, I don't know if Bob will do this. I'm not sure and I'm just so grateful to have this time with you. This is just so wonderful.
Yeah,
my goodness.
I'm your student. It's so fun to see the impact you're having in the podcast, and just really honored to jump on board and learn some more from you.
Mm. Well, you stepped in. People who are a part of the Nothing is Wasted community, they're going to know how pivotal you were in my own healing journey. And, I remember getting an email from you. Actually, my assistant got an email from you weeks later after you were going to be in Chicago. And then she was like, I think Bob Goff just reached out to you. And I was like, wait, like the Bob Goff, or is this a spam thing, or what's going on here? And I couldn't believe genuinely that you would take time to step into my story and be so accessible and be so present in that. I mean, it was just one of those things where, I knew what you were doing. We had some, connections through connections kind of thing, but I didn't realize that would be something that would even be available. I'm going, oh my gosh, this is crazy. here's my question. This is the reputation that you have, Bob, of being so accessible and present and showing up. The ministry of presence is just something that you embody. What
Yeah.
what made you want to reach out to a stranger like me and right copy and paste to everybody else that you catch on the second bounce, if you will? What
Yeah.
made you want to do that? Why is
Yeah.
that so important?
It's kind of a worldview, and I think you share it, and so many others do, that we are a worldwide family of friends. And some of us have met each other, and some of us are yet to meet each other. But when things happen in our lives, it's an opportunity for us to just reassert that we're a family of friends, and we show up for each other, and we don't offer advice. We just say, "Hey, I'm in," and if there's a point of connection and that scratches where it itches, let's do that. So I know so many people in this podcast are learning about how to do a good job with showing up for people and how
Yeah.
to not say lame things
Yeah.
when, when somebody is hurting. But I really sense that we're this family. We call it with tongue in cheek around our office. We call it not a church. So we're not a
Mm.
church, but we act like a church. I see Acts and how they said they broke bread together, so they
Yeah.
pounded the carbs, and they had things in common. And sometimes it's our pain, it's our loss, it's our humanity that we have in common, and so we jump for the chance
Mm.
to just say, "Man, I hurt with you, I hurt for you, I'm standing with you," and then to say like this is a data point. This is someplace
Yeah.
I'm going to be. Would that be helpful? Is that something that has you leaning towards or away? So just finding that, and I just found your graciousness in the middle of just so much pain. I just really came to learn, and you delivered on that. So
Mm.
thank you for what you're continuing to teach me and others.
Well, you've done this for so many other people, other friends of mine, and this, like you said, this web of this world, I guess you could call it Christendom or the church or whatever. You start to get connected with other people, especially people who have gone through really difficult things, right? There's something that sobers you up in that makes you human, that brings an empathy when you go through your own pain and trial. And so I've met so many other people who are like, yeah, Bob reached out and really helped me in this. And, this is something, and you just said you're showing up to learn, which is amazing because they're all feeling like they're showing up and they're learning from you. What have you learned as you've stepped in for people who have gone through pain?
Yeah, what a great question. One thing is I take a lot of notes
Mm.
for myself. Like even I remember the time we had together. I remember spending a good long time reflecting on the things that you had to say and observations and all that. So when we show up for people, go there to learn, not to save, educate, inform, like that.
Mm.
That's not what people need. Class is not in session except for you. When you show up to say, okay, so I'm here to learn, and then to be helpful in any ways, to not say, hey, if you need anything, let me know, which is a go to. You don't know what to say. So sometimes you reach for the stupid shelf. Because the stupid shelf is right about waist high and it's got so many things right there saying, pick me, pick me. But to maybe reach up a little higher and to say, at a time that I've felt loss, as people that are listening have felt loss, you really don't know what you need. You just like need a loved one to return. You need uh, answers that won't come for a long time. So instead, to ask questions like instead of how are you, ask a question that is kinder, that says, what does it feel like to be you right now? And maybe give some people the kindness of saying, while you're thinking about that, let me tell you what it feels like to be me right now. It
Mm.
feels like available. It feels like feeling a little insecure, but also feeling so much loss, like not a borrowed loss, but like identifying with loss and just how the times where I've felt just gut punched, like I couldn't breathe. That's what it feels like to me. Me, what does it feel like to be you? Like that,
Mm.
and no need to answer if you're still collecting your thoughts about that, but to just give people room to do that. And that doesn't make you a little mini psychologist. It makes you human.
Mm.
It moves instead of over identifying to say, well, I know what that feels like. I mean, like, oh, stupid shelf. Just say,
Oh, goodness.
yeah. If you were describing this, do you feel like does it feel like it comes in waves, or is it just a constant thing? Just actually questions that are kind and don't cause a person to feel like they're having their deposition taken.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Mm. Mm.
One
That's
thing you
interesting.
don't know about me, Davey, is that I think I've used well, we have this place up in Canada. We've blown
Yeah.
up lots of roads, and that's the only way you can move dirt up there. You get these big sticks of dynamite and drill holes and blow
Yeah.
up and get the excavator to move it. But I don't think I've had the ear protection that I probably should have. And so I have that condition that's not unusual. Many people have it, but my ears are always ringing.
Mm.
Isn't that crazy? So 24 hours a day, it's like I feel like Rocky, like answer the phone. So my ears are always ringing, except when I'm having a really meaningful conversation. Like right now, they're not ringing. Isn't that crazy? So
Wow.
24 hours a day, except when I'm having a conversation that really matters, then my ears aren't ringing. And so what I want to have happen is for love to be the loudest tone in the room.
Yeah.
Want empathy to like be what you hear, not all the other things that are vying, saying, pick me, pick me.
Yeah.
So I don't know. How have people done a good job at reaching out to you, and how have you, as you've reached out to other people, felt like you found your groove?
Well, I think you just said it. I mean, there is a stupid shelf, and unfortunately, people are well-meaning and well-intentioned, but they end up saying some really dumb things. And I think we can all relate to that. Like as we go
Totally. I've been
through,
one of them.
yeah, as we go through grief, right? We almost have to also carry with us grace for other people because we know that they're going to say some stupid things because we've said stupid things. And even if you're the quote unquote expert on grief because you've experienced some really difficult loss, you show up not knowing what to say too. And I think that that probably informs us that it's not really about what we say, it's about being there, it's
Yeah,
about
if
being present.
you show up as that student to
Yeah.
learn. I remember a friend that had suffered a loss. They tragically lost their infant just for no reason. They just put her down, and the next morning she wasn't alive. And there was a person that really, I'm sure, was well intended, but she said, "I know exactly how you feel. My dog died too."
Yeah.
And I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, yikes."
Yeah.
That equivalency between, and what has been helpful for me when I'll interact with people and they say something by mistake that's kind of lame, I'll picture in a little thought bubble over their head these words, I'm being really helpful right now,
Mm,
or I'm trying.
yep.
Um, and even though they aren't being really helpful right now, it makes me more empathetic because I just see the words like I'm trying. Um, there
Right.
was a gathering of men. I bet there was 12 or 1500 of these guys somewhere in Pennsylvania, and they were nice enough to ask me to come, probably just to sample the food. But I jumped up on the stage, and when I was all done with this, I said, "Everybody, all right, everybody, stand on your feet and throw your arm around the guy next to you." And nobody did, and I was like,
Mm,
maybe I need to say that more enthusiastically. So I like dug deep. I'm like, everybody up on your feet and throw your arms around the guy next to you. And then I realized these are all Amish men. Like it's all beards, no mustaches. I hadn't read the room. And
mm,
they don't hug it out. And
yep.
so one of the things that lived experience does, it makes me more empathetic for people who aren't reading the room. People, they walk in, they are not reading the pain in the room. They're
Mm,
not reading, this is a time for absolute quiet right now.
yeah.
And just that. And then sometimes giving people a really graceful note is so nice because it doesn't, at a time you're feeling a little tapped out, like you don't want to have to pull it together for
Right.
another conversation.
Yeah.
So I just hope that as you're passing along in this podcast, not just tips, but just saying, hey, this is how we navigate this really difficult thing. And everybody's an amateur. I've never seen anybody go pro on loving people, like have, one of those leather suits like a race car driver and like, sponsored by Hershey's and Starburst and all that.
Yep.
But instead they were rookies at this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing. As you're stepping in and helping so many people, I happen to know that you're an Enneagram 7, which I love that because
Flaming. Yes.
my wife is an Enneagram 7. And so I feel like every time I'm like, when I listen to you or I hear stuff from you, I'm able to kind of relate. Of course, we're all very different, even within those Enneagram typings. But I do know that one of the reflexive natures of an Enneagram 7 is to run away from pain. And yet you've leaned into people's pain so much. How do you process that? How do you do that as someone who's by nature, like your motivation is like, I just kind of want to keep pain at bay and, just fill my world with pleasure. And how do you navigate that stuff with other people? Because you do it so well.
Yeah, it's so kind of you to say that. I feel like I'm just learning so much about that. There's a place we spend the summers at in Canada, and 400 kids will show up with their luggage for I don't know, 4 days and 3 nights at this camp, and then they all leave. But the boat broke that carries the luggage from the big boat that brings them into the camp. And so I've got a landing craft, and I would pull up every week, and they would offload all the kids, these teenagers' luggage, and I'd drive it into camp. And they would throw the luggage to me, and I'd stack it. And 400 people worth of luggage is quite a bit. But it was a good workout. I kind of enjoyed it, and it made me smile. What do you think is a reasonable amount of pounds for a girl to bring for 4 days and 3 nights at a camp?
Well,
What do you think? 30
yeah,
pounds,
you would think it would not
20?
exceed 50. At least the airlines
Yeah,
don't think it should.
exactly. I swear they threw the duffel bag. Man, there must have been a dead guy in there. It was, I got the whole 175 pounds. We weighed it later, all in my shoulder. And man, it is 16 weeks later, and I am
Mm,
still favoring that shoulder because it really, really hurt.
yeah.
Whatever happened in there really hurt. And my point is this, that sometimes for an Enneagram 7, we run away from pain, but then our hurts cause us to favor that, and then it atrophies. Because I've been picking
Mm,
up everything left-handed because I know how much it hurts to use my right arm 15 weeks later. But I'm noticing now, and it wasn't like I was cut like you go and rip, get, work out and all that. I do up one push-up a year, whether I need it or not. But my arm, because that was where the wound was, became the
mm,
weakest part of my body. And so what I want to do is in Enneagram 7 is lean into that, not let that fight or flight kind of thing go on. Like, oh,
right.
sadness, I'm out of here. Like, let me go find some confetti and
Right.
leprechauns and all that. But instead to lean into that as a person who needs to learn. So
Mm,
to just show up in the vicinity of that. And it's not like an episode of Fear Factor, but it's being wise enough to know that this is a weak point for you. This is
yeah.
an area where you need to grow and learn, and then find really safe guides to get there. No safer guide than you. You're just an
Mm,
honest, safe, transparent guide. And so we could be this idea of adjacency, that we could be adjacent to those things we need to learn about. And that's what I try to do for each thing. Um, I would say that most of the people that I know that are in this really beautiful stage of understanding their faith and their wounds and all that, they would self-describe as church adjacent as well.
mm,
Think of it church adjacent as like you're not the one in the front row, perhaps, but you're not the one saying snarky things about like the church, the bride of Christ.
yeah.
But you're kind of adjacent. It's like the guy at the tire store. He's just
Yeah.
across the way looking. He didn't want to get any of the crazy on him, but he does like the faith part. And so, what if
Mm,
we got adjacent to people who were adjacent? Like,
mm,
so if they're adjacent to pain, what if you get adjacent to them? If they're adjacent to joy, get adjacent to them. And what I find from people who are church adjacent is that they see some stuff they don't quite understand. Like all of us have had a mixed bag of
yeah.
interactions, some positive, some negative. And you're not there to call balls and strikes. What you're there is
Mm,
to learn and to understand. I wonder why I do that. Why do I run from pain? And what could I learn from a safe guide who seems to be navigating pain in a really honest way? This
mm,
idea of whimsy, that we enter into whimsy through the doorway of authenticity. And so
yeah.
some people will perceive somebody as like yippee skippy and unicorns and confetti. But really, what you do is you want to enter into that through your authenticity. And so I
Yeah.
would say for listeners, find really authentic people. I found you, I sought you out because I go, I can learn something from him.
Hey there, everyone. It's Davey Blackburn here. And one thing I know to be true is that in all of our lives, in all of our stories, pain is the common denominator. It's the thread that makes all of us human. It's just part of the human experience. Even though the challenges and struggles may look different for each of us, we all have or are walking through something hard. That's why Nothing is Wasted Ministries, we're committed to bringing you new resources that will meet you in the middle of whatever pain point you're navigating. Now, our latest masterclass, Parenting a Child with Disability, Hope in the Challenges, with Misty Snyder, will give hope to those of you walking through parenting a child with disability. I know so many of my friends have been asking for more resources in whatever disability their child suffers from. And maybe you have friends or family that they're suffering from this kind of very real pain point, and this would be a great one to refer over to them. It can be very difficult to step into the unfamiliar world of a recently diagnosed disability, but Misty knows what it's like and wants to give you the encouragement you need to step into the unknown and find joy along the way. I promise you, joy can be found in the middle of these very trying times where there doesn't seem to be any kind of hope on the horizon or end in sight. So I want to encourage you, go pick up this masterclass, Parenting a Child with a Disability, Hope in the Challenges by Misty Snyder. You can purchase this class by going to nothingiswasted.com/masterclass, where you can get it a la carte, or better yet, join our Community Plus membership. And for just $20 a month, which is a tax-deductible donation, you'll have access to this and all of our content in our growing content library. Go to nothingiswasted.com/community plus to learn more and join Community Plus today, and you can get access to this masterclass and all of our other masterclasses, mini courses, bonus podcast episodes, live events on demand. All of those things are behind this content library at Community Plus. Now listen, parenting is one of the most difficult callings any of us can face, and parenting a child with disabilities can add more challenges even further. But through all the difficulties and challenges, we're here to remind you that in your story, nothing is wasted. And that's a great mantra, and sometimes you need practical help in the midst of it. I promise you, this masterclass will be practical help. It will give you handholds on how you can navigate this particular valley. Parenting a Child with a Disability, Hope in the Challenges, with Misty Snyder. Pick it up today. I think it's a really good point, Bob. You know, a lot of people will look at optimism or positivity and they'll think it's, they'll write it off as very Pollyanna. They'll say, oh, this person's just majorly bypassing what the pain or what they're going through. But really, you're saying that the pathway to whimsy, the pathway to that kind of resilience and hope is leaning into the pain, is really leaning into authenticity and stepping with somebody. It's not like they're not mutually exclusive. It's not like you run away from one to attain the other.
Right. Think of people that you may be in your circle of engagement that you would describe as cynical. And that's the person that says like, Southwest Airlines or whatever, and they say some bad experience they had. And that's true. They had a bad experience, but there's that kind of a lot of gray water coming out of them. They're cynics. Yeah. Here's the crazy part. I was just looking into this idea of cynicism because it seems to have gotten into our ventilation system. And the founder of cynicism was a guy named Diogenes. And Diogenes, if you ever see a picture of him, you'll see him inside a big water barrel holding a lamp. And I'd be like, he lived in the water barrel. The cynics were awesome. Davey, you and I would want to hang out with the cynics. We would want to be cynics. They lived a little bit apart from society. Does that sound like
Mm,
some we navigate faith, lived a little bit apart from society. They made their own clothes. They weren't making
mm,
snarky jokes about people. They just said we would need to create a little buffer between all the crazy. They were
mm.
like kind of people adjacent, society adjacent. They wanted
Yeah.
to keep crazy over there. And Diogenes would walk through the streets of Athens every night, every day at high noon with a lamp lit. And
Mm,
people would say, Diogenes, what are you doing? It's high noon. And he said, I'm looking for virtue. Isn't that beautiful? Don't
mm.
you want to? I want to be an old school cynic, not the one
Wow.
that's rolling his eyes and saying snarky things and making like funny jokes at somebody's expense, but instead to say, I'm looking for virtue. Is there something I can learn in someone else's pain? Is there something I can learn from my own pain?
Yeah.
Is there something I can learn from my go-to, which is to avoid pain? Can I lean
Mm.
into that? And sometimes maybe shut up a little bit more than I have. Oh my God. I want to shut up a little bit more than I have in the past. So
Yeah.
not to fill the room with a bunch of words, but to fill it with this presence of God that we would be there, that you could see this as holy ground and like slip out of your shoes. That's what they always did. People
Mm.
always took
Yep.
off their sandals when God was present to see these as holy ground. And then to do things that would be like that would allow people who share in this pain, whether faith guides their steps or not, to find an entry point. Remember that I'm just flooding to mind when we spent that an evening together. There was a gathering, and then
Yep.
everybody just participated. Would you describe what that was, what that
Well, I
felt like to be you?
oh, it was amazing. I showed up. You asked if I could come to Chicago and meet you, and we had sushi right beforehand, and then we went to this church that we've had Pastor Tim Harlow on. It was Parkview Christian Church, and you were speaking, and I think it was a volunteer big gathering that they had that night or something. It was something really special for the people who were serving in their church. And I'm sitting on the front row, and we had a mutual friend there as a musician who is there as well, and he was, he's from Chicago, so he was there meeting you. I got to, meet him, and it was just a really sweet time. But I kind of expected to stay back in the shadows. It was right after everything had happened, so our story was very public, and I was feeling this sense of like, I don't really want to be seen right now, but I was feeling so filled with hope by you just walking with me and taking the time with me. And then you turned and you go, there's someone here. We don't need to get into the details of this, but someone here has gone through a really, really difficult time recently. And I wonder if we would just lift him up. And I think everybody there kind of thinks, oh, we'll lift him up in prayer, right? That's the catchphrase. We'll just lift him up in prayer. And you're like, no, I mean, like, let's really lift him up, like as like a symbol, as something where he's just, let's have him just crowd surf. And it was, when you say it, it almost sounds peculiar. It's like, wait a minute, they carried you, they like crowd surfed you around. And if you weren't there, it would sound very peculiar, but if you were there, it's very sacred.
It was a really tender
It
moment.
was
That was
such a
one of
sweet
those
moment.
sandals off moments. Yeah.
It was. And that actually gave me, Bob, uh, a picture and some language for how the church can carry people through very difficult times. And I know the church has not necessarily as a whole been had a reputation of doing that or historically been great at doing that, and the body, but the potential of the body of Christ to carry people, to be a hammock of grace for people,
Ooh,
is
wow. I hope you've
just
written that thing down. A hammock of
powerful.
grace.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I really like that we can move. And you don't need a Bible verse for everything, but it's like very centering for me because I know that
yeah.
that would be true. It's Galatians 5:6. The only thing that counts is faith expressed in love. And so
Mm,
in that moment, seeing people express their faith and love and not voyeuristically to like know
yeah.
all the details or what's the deal or who they're surfing, but just know, hey, we got a man down, and that would be enough information. And to see people respond with grace and not needing to know the details they don't need to know, I think that's it. So that sometimes people um, uh, in our culture and the way we process things, they want to know all the details.
Mm,
And what if we could say it's just enough to know someone's hurting in the room? And what's my part is to just be strong for them, lift
yeah.
them up. And you don't want a bunch of um, people that are well intentioned, but aren't in the moment. This is reminding me from college days. I went to the Harvard of the West, San Diego State University. Me and 60,000 surfers that occasionally showed up for class. And a big swell blew in from the south. Gosh, I wonder, was this something where it was back in Indianapolis as well? Let me tell you the rest of the story.
Maybe, yeah.
Back in at the time when the swell would blow in, all the surfers would go to this place called Sunset Cliffs, and I jumped off. You jump off this cliff after a wave hits, and you slide down, and now you're in the water. And somehow I caught a wave very briefly, and it was just huge. And I, of course, wiped out. And then all the waves are pushing me closer and closer to the shore, and I was struggling. I was done. And there was a guy at the top of the cliff, and he saw me, and I'm so grateful he didn't like call out like John 3:16.
Yeah.
He didn't start yelling Bible verses to me. He got in the water with
Yeah.
me. And that's what I can think of, even now, the people in our faith community and even beyond who've gotten in the water. They don't shout helpful advice. What they do is they get in the water with you. And it was
Yeah.
at that place years later that I went with my boys to watch a sunset. And tragically, somebody got too close to the edge. And I remember being at this place where this young man fell over, and it didn't go well for him. He landed on his head like 60 feet below. And so we knew from surfing in that place how to make our way down there. And for the next hour, we're doing whatever we can to sustain his life. And then the fire trucks come and rappel down. And I got a note because I was back in Indy from his mom. And she said, I read the police report and that you were there with him in the end. And could we meet? And like, oh, sadness, boy. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I just have no shelf for that. But when I went back out there, I had taken a photograph before all this had happened of the sunset because that's what we're
Mm.
there to do. And so I framed it in this real simple frame, and I was able to give it to her and to say, "This is the last thing your son saw. Like, just this is the beauty that he saw."
Mm.
So instead of like thinking of the magnitude of the hurt and the all of the pain and all of that. I think what I want to do is not abandon those, but I want
Yeah.
to talk about the beauty. I want to
Yeah.
look
That's
for
good.
virtue. I want us to reframe what is going on, not in a Pollyanna way, as you said,
Right.
but in an authentic way that we get to lift people's eyes to see something, not just the train wreck that happened, not the dumpster fire of emotions, but to say where there's beauty. And again, read the room. It may
Yeah.
not be the time to talk about the beauty, but
Yeah.
maybe a little bit later might be.
Well, I remember, when we left sushi, we were walking to the car that night and we were about to head to that speaking event. And you said, Davey, you need to start writing down everything that you are experiencing, what you're feeling, and the beauty that you're experiencing in that. And that marked me because I was like, it doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of beauty in this right now. But I began to have my eyes open to it, and because of course, we both come from a faith perspective that our God does a redemptive work. And so we can see, all right, well, there's a cross, there's the injustice of the cross, the greatest tragedy and injustice that happened in all time. And then you've got the resurrection. So God frames up even the story arc of history in that way, but he also does that in our lives too. So you helped me to open my eyes up to not diminish or dismiss your pain, but begin to see the beauty in the pain that you're going through. It's so helpful.
Think about this idea that we need to see it so we can understand it, so we can take it to God to fix.
Yeah.
Uh, so that idea, make your request known to me, but this is a God that says, I know it before you ask for it. And I think the whole idea is to make it known to yourself. So you don't just have this general, like, hey, I want to be happier prayer, or please remove the pain prayer, which is an honest prayer. However, we can drill down and we can see what are the pain points. Somebody
Yeah.
listening right now and you're feeling lonely or isolated, like let's really drill down, not camp out there, but understand it. So once we see it, then we start like putting the pieces together, find safe people. Man, I just want to be
Mm,
Switzerland. Give me
mm.
bar of chocolate and a bobsled. I just want to be Switzerland to people, a safe place. And we all have the opportunity to be a safe place. And sometimes it means like not reaching for the stupid shelf and
Yeah.
just knowing sometimes just sitting at somebody's feet
Mm,
and just say, listen, I didn't know what to do, so I washed your car. I don't know.
mm,
I don't know. I didn't know what to do, so I made your pie. I didn't know
mm,
what to do. And so there's something so honoring. And then to not resist that urge to put things into an elevator speech and figure
mm,
it out for somebody to say, man, this is going to be a long road, but I brought a bunch of Snickers bars and I want you to do that. I'm going to send you a Snicker bar every week.
mm,
Like to just like that kind of like, I'm here. Um, yeah, is super helpful. And then to use this inner, for a time of reflection to say, we have this really brief life. Psalm 90,
mm.
like to count your days, to understand, and this idea that we're a vapor, that we're here and then gone about as quickly. And so, what are you going to leave behind? I'm so glad that you started writing books. I hope you'll continue to do that,
Yeah.
to take those things. I bet I send myself 100 emails a day. When something
Yep.
strikes me, even after this conversation, I'll just jot down a couple thoughts. And I get home at night, I'm like, him again, block. But instead of when an idea comes your way, net that butterfly, because otherwise
Yeah.
it's going to go land on somebody else's nose. But for the brief time it
Mm,
landed on yours, I want us to like say, is there something in here? And then if faith guides your steps, do what the Apostle Paul said. It's just like check it against Scripture. Just say
that's
like,
good.
hey, is that something that just sounds right? Because plenty of things Tony Robbins says sound right.
Yeah.
But to say with my worldview, with my faith view, is that true? And
Mm,
if it is, that's awesome. I only put stuff in my books that I've already vetted to make sure it doesn't just sound right, but it is true. And that
yeah.
is that, again, that just go next level.
Mm,
Just put that half a beat in there. It'll be so helpful. On behalf of everyone else, I'd just say, like, add a beat. Just
yeah.
pause before you say that thing.
Hi, friends. Just want to interrupt this conversation to see if you're looking for a way to help a friend who is hurting. You having a hard time knowing how to show up and show that you care in whatever pain they're walking through right now. Listen, we understand, and we've been there. Even though I've walked through my own trauma and painful season, I can still struggle to know how to best enter into the pain of those around me. I'll never forget the first funeral that I preached after losing my late wife Amanda in 2015. I showed up and I felt like I was stumbling through, not knowing what to say, because it just is so difficult to know exactly how to enter into somebody else's pain. In fact, there were so many people who were well-meaning right after my late wife passed away that they would send me all kinds of different things, but most of those things, they either filled my house with clutter or I ended up disposing of them because it just wasn't useful. As well-meaning and well-intentioned as people were, they just, I don't think, knew what to send me. You want to find that perfect combination of meaningful and thoughtful and practical. And that's why we've created the Nothing is Wasted Restore Box. Nothing is Wasted Restore Box is just what you've been looking for as you seek to show support and love for a friend, a coworker, or a family member who is hurting. The Restore Box is a thoughtfully curated gift box that has some of our favorite resources and reminders from Nothing is Wasted Ministries that will encourage anyone who is walking through a difficult time. Whether it be loss, a divorce, a lost job, an unexpected diagnosis, betrayal, or just a season of depression or anxiety, or really any other pain point for that matter. This box is for when someone you love needs a reminder of hope and that nothing is wasted in their pain. Each Restore Box includes a copy of the Nothing is Wasted book, a copy of the Pain to Purpose devotional, a beautifully crafted scripture pack full of encouraging verses, the Nothing is Wasted anvil paperweight, and a Nothing is Wasted wristband. Now, we know it's hard to step into someone's pain, but we also know the cost of not stepping in is far greater. You can show you care and offer hope at the same time by sending your friend the Restore Box. Just head to nothingiswasted.com/Restore Box. That's Restore Box, RESTOR box. So leave off that second E and give a meaningful gift to someone in your life who is hurting. You can follow the link in the show notes if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, or right below this YouTube video if you're watching it on YouTube, nothingiswasted.com/Restore Box. and give the gift of hope and healing to that person in your life who's going through a difficult time. nothingiswasted.com/restorebox. Yeah. You've done a lot of encouraging people to write. I mean, you've got the podcast, The Writing Room, and you've got, workshops that you lead, different things like that. Why is that such an important part of your legacy, helping other people to write down what they've experienced? Why do you think that's important?
Yeah, I just think, again, I'm right back to this really brief time that we're here. So
Yeah.
if you catch the luggage in the shoulder, maybe that's not a chapter, that isn't even a paragraph, but it's a sentence.
Mm,
So to just for this brief period of time that we're here, I want my kids to remember some of these things because I'll be, gone. I don't know if I'll be in a jar or a snow globe. I was kind of thinking maybe an hourglass. Um, but I want something leaning up against it. I want to say,
yeah.
what are the questions I've asked, honest questions, the things that are, and again, this isn't a textbook where you say, this is how it works.
Mm,
Uh, these are the questions I'm asking. I love this honest question from a dad in Mark 9. Like, I
yeah.
believe, just help me with all the parts I don't believe right now. That is
Yeah.
such an honest thing to say. So if somebody's listening, you go like, man, I want to believe, but I just don't. I'm not there yet. What a great response that would have been from Ananias and Sapphira to say, I'm just
Mm,
not there yet. But
yeah.
instead, they
Yeah.
said, I am there. And it just didn't
Yeah.
end up that great for him. But to just say, I'm just not there yet. Like, I think all of heaven celebrates that. They go,
Yeah.
ah, somebody asking an honest question because they're going to receive a faithful answer and then one that'll have some shelf life. But if we're faking it all the time, saying we believe stuff we don't believe yet, then I just don't think that's helpful. We become a caricature of who we really are
Mm,
because God didn't make that person. He made the ones with the questions. That's the one he knows. The other one we came up with.
yeah. Well, we have a lot of people that are part of our community listening to the podcast, watching it on YouTube, who they love to help other people in pain because they've
Oh,
experienced
yeah.
so much help themselves. They've gone
Yeah.
through a really difficult journey and that people have showed up for them. So they go, all right, I want to be a wounded healer, right? As Henry Nouwen talks about. I want to
Yeah.
be
There you go.
someone who helps to bring that kind of hope to somebody else. But then as they get into it, they realize how tiring that can be. You almost feel like people are extracting stuff from you all the time, and so then they begin to carve out there and become okay, very selective as to how they help or who they help, or you get strategic about it. You've done the very opposite. I mean, what marked me is love does you put your number in the back of the book. What author
Yes.
does that, especially best-selling author, to make himself so accessible? How would you advise those folks who are like, I want to help people, I want to be accessible to people, but I feel that it drains me sometimes. It's really hard to like how do you walk that tension yourself in times where you're feeling drained or exhausted? How do you reconnect to the vine?
Yeah. So the first thought I had when you mentioned that was how delightful that somebody is so self-aware that they know what drains them. If
Mm.
you talk to Sweet Maria Goff, she'd say she's like a race car with a really tiny gas tank. So she can go really fast for a short period of time. Her world is me, the people we made, the people they married, and the people they made. That's it. Yeah, that's it. So that makes me a pastor of a church of 12. We're
Yeah,
small, but we're mighty.
that's right.
For me, while I love that group of people, I feel like there's some more additional energy I have to
Mm.
be available to other people. And so in different ways to just do that, whether it's a phone number or I have a very cryptic email. It's Bob Goff at Bob Goff. See what I did there? So, but for
Yep.
me, that doesn't feel like a home invasion. Yet for Maria, it would. So know how God knit you together and then lean into that and to say during this brief period of time, I want to be available to people. I'm never the smartest guy in the room. I'm not the smartest guy in this conversation. But
Yeah, you probably are, but that's
I
okay.
could be the most available one. And I think there's
Yeah.
something beautiful. And yeah, sometimes it'll go around the bend. There was a woman that called not long ago, and I said, "Hello, it's Bob here." And she said, "The devil's in my bathroom." I'm like, I have junior high school boys. I know exactly how you feel. Uh, and I said, well, who's your best friend? And she said, well, there's a woman named Mary. And I said, well, you don't want to face this alone. Like, call Mary and have her come join you. And I thought that was it. And 2 hours later, I get a phone call from her. She said, devil's gone. I'm like, awesome. I
Okay.
don't need to know the middle part. I don't need to know all the other details. There was just felt like such a human contact
Mm,
that somebody was feeling something. Sometimes we just pull over and we give them, a cup of water. Like it was just
wow.
in the middle of that. And so we don't need to know all the end, nor do we have the bandwidth to do that.
Yeah.
So I think I told you once there was a guy, Keith Green, way back in the day. He was one of those early contemporary Christian musicians, and it was before the internet. And I had written to him about something, and he wrote back 3 sentences. I felt like such a boss. Keith freaking Green wrote me 3 sentences, mind blown. And now we are 40 years later, and everybody who writes me gets 3 sentences, and not the same
Wow.
3 sentences, but just that idea. I don't have as much time as I wish I had for longer
That's
responses,
good.
but that, like, I felt so seen by him, so like I mattered to him. I felt so engaged in that, and I've carried that with me without even remembering what the 3 sentences were. It wasn't he
Wow.
said, and he said, no, it was just the fact that he was available, and he put a
Wow.
stamp on the envelope and mailed it. And yeah, I think that the power of availability. Jesus had 3 years of public ministry, and yet he was the most available guy. He wasn't
Wow.
looking at his watch or a sundial or whatever. He was just like, he wasn't given, I'm not reading the scriptures that, like, hey, I'm busy. Could you just shorten this up a little bit?
Yeah.
Just give me the cliff notes. He would sat with somebody. He said, like, who pulled on my shirt? Who, like, he had time for the guy in the sycamore tree. He had
Mm,
time for people.
love it, man. Bob, this is awesome. You are at the time of this, as we're releasing this, you just released a book called Catching Whimsy, and super excited about that. All of the stuff that you have written, and as you've encouraged other people to write, you've set and you've begun to make sense and meaning of the things you're experiencing that has helped so many people. I mean, Love Does, obviously the iconic one that released back in 2012, and then Dream Big, Distracted, Everybody Always, Live in Grace, Walk in Love. I mean, all of these are incredible. So Catching Whimsy, give us a little bit on why is that such an important message for you right now in this period of time? What are you encouraging people with that would be kind of the new, I don't know, I guess new wineskin, new wave of like what is happening in your life, and you're wanting to encourage people to catch whimsy? What does that look
Yeah,
like?
I really want people to think what might be possible. When we
Mm,
started this whole idea way back with Love Does, we told 400,000 kids that hadn't been in school for a decade that we're opening a school in Gulu, Uganda, and you can come, it's free. And only 9 kids showed up. I don't think 8 of them wanted to be there, but there was one kid that did, or so he said. And so, but then it grew and grew and grew, and now there's 1,500 kids that live in this place, and we just got back from graduation. We're building a university, and it's an example of this idea of whimsy. We asked the president of Uganda if we could have 6 giraffes. I wanted a zoo. You're supposed to call it a habitat, but like whatever. I wanted to find a animal that didn't bite people and would be hard to lose. And I'm like, well, giraffes. So obviously. So the whole idea, if you were talking to somebody about building a university, you would be having one of those boardroom conversations.
Yeah.
As soon as you have a giraffe reach its head in through the window, like there's something, it just the conversation changes. That's whimsy, but I would call it a strategic whimsy. Like, so it's a
Mm,
lot of joy on the surface, but underneath that is a mile of strategy, not manipulation, just strategy. You know why you're doing what you're doing. So I
mm,
write books for the guy at the tire store. I don't put Bible verses in my books.
mm,
This is a departure from that because I wanted to write a book that would be a devotional for people that actually faith does guide their steps. So I
yeah.
thought, wouldn't that be great if we started with this idea of a childlike faith? And I didn't
Mm,
grow up in the church. I didn't know anybody who did. Uh, uh, But that idea when the disciples are trying to help Jesus get the kids in a line, and he said, like, help me, don't help me. He said, I tell you the truth, unless you change and become like a child, you'll never enter the kingdom of God. So evidently there's more than praying just the prayer. But there's
Wow.
this idea of like a child, not childish, because some of us guys, me and you, buddy,
Yeah.
like we emphasize the childish part, but childlike. And so what I want people to do is start out their day with a little like a story. Matthew 13, it said Jesus never spoke to anybody without a story. So
Mm.
there'll be a story, but connected to some scripture. And I hope it'll encourage people. If you lose your keys, then you think, where was the last place I saw my keys? And you go back to that place. And so maybe if you're listening, if you lost your joy, say, where
Mm.
was the last time I was really joyful? Where was the last time I laughed so hard the milk came out my nose? Like, where was the last time I felt secure? Where was the last time I felt loved, and return to that place? And so that's what a strategic whimsy would do. Say, let's go back to those places, find ourselves. If faith guides your steps, maybe find some scripture, some assurances from God
Wow.
that you can trust, that you can take to the bank. And then just, it's like hopefully a tap on the shoulder. Say, you
I
got
love it.
this.
I love it. Man, it's amazing. Well, you certainly have you've just really inspired me personally, Bob, to do just that, to catch whimsy and to really tap into that childlike faith. I think there's so much, we work with churches so often, and there's just there can be such an institutionalization of it. There can be such a convoluted nature of like the not so good cynical kind of perspective that people are looking at when it comes to church and the world and all of these things. And you're inviting us back to go, hey, let's just walk with Jesus in a childlike faith, in wonder, in whimsy, and in awe. And I love it. Thank you so much for inspiring it. Thank you
Oh,
for spending
thank
time with
you,
us,
Davey.
man.
Let's go full Diogenes. Well, let's look for
Let's do it.
virtue. Yeah,
Let's
if
do
we
it.
just like have, you don't need to wear a toga, but I dare you to walk through Indianapolis with a lamp lit at high noon. And when they arrest you, I'll come bail you out, buddy.
Sounds good. Sounds good. Thanks for spending time with our community, Bob.
Thanks a million. Thanks for being such a really great friend to so many people, including me, and a great teacher. Like I've just, your humility and authenticity have been like gateways to greater whimsy in my life.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of the Nothing is Wasted podcast. We hope you enjoyed our conversation and found it as encouraging and insightful as we did. Now, don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you like to listen, and leave us a rating and review. Your feedback helps us to connect to those who need these stories of hope and healing most, and to reach more listeners just like you. Also, subscribe to our Nothing is Wasted Ministries YouTube channel. Now be sure to stay connected with us on social media. You can follow us at Nothing is Wasted Ministries, follow me at Davey Blackburn, and follow Aubrey at ObSam. We'd love to interact with you, so be sure to stop by and let us know how these conversations are impacting you and your story. And if you want to learn more about all the incredible resources we have available to help you navigate whatever valley you're walking through, visit our website at nothingiswasted.com. If you're ready to get started in your journey towards healing and finding purpose in your pain, we'd love to help. Simply go to nothingiswasted.com/start here for your next step. Lastly, a big thank you to Sleeping at Last for providing all the music for the Nothing is Wasted podcast. We want to thank our guests, and we want to thank you, our Nothing is Wasted community, for tuning in regularly. Remember, no matter what challenges you face, whatever pain you are walking through, nothing is wasted. We'll see you next time for another incredible conversation here on the Nothing is Wasted podcast. But before you go, check out this short clip from our next episode. Thanks for joining us, friends.
For so many of us that are questioning our worth and questioning like why we're on this planet and what our purpose is, I just would urge you to surrender and get quiet in what you need and start talking to Jesus and ask him what he needs from you, and he'll show you. And I know for me, he's showed me, he's revealed people in my life that don't have a place. He's showed me people in my life that have completely elevated who I am, have brought me closer to the Lord instead
awesome.
of away from it. But
Yeah.
you know, it's the surrender, and also to having the discernment and discipline to know that this is the path that I'm supposed to. People say walking, I say rolling on.
Come on.